There were a few scenes which we shot and cut out. There was a scene with Paul and a girl actress.
Paul's sequence was with the actress Isla Blair, where he followed her upstairs and they had a dialogue sequence together. I think he was trying to chat her up, possibly.
It was quite strange because I was very young, I was only about 18, and my agent just rang me up and said, they want to see you for a small part in A Hard Day's Night. So I went along and I think I read for them or something, and they said, that's very nice, we'd like you to play the part. What I was supposed to do was to act badly at the beginning, to act in a very sort of flamboyant, flowery, 18th century sort of Victorian sort of way of talking, and Paul was to come and say, well, actually that sounds terrible to me, why don't you do it like this? He knew that it was silly, him coming and telling a professional actress really how to act, and I kept thinking, well, actually, I think probably if I did it the way he suggested I did it, maybe it would be even worse, you know.
I remember the way Dick shot it. He shot it with a handheld camera. Probably Dick was operating himself, and he circled around Paul while this was going on. This was the main master shot, and it probably went on for about 5 to 8 minutes.
They put me in a sort of restoration type dressing with great sort of panniers and hoops, things and bows and fluffy sleeves and things like that. My hair was very, very short then. It was in fact not dissimilar to the way that Paul was wearing his hair. It was very, or the way it is now. And they put me in a sort of piece, I think, that went with it, and sort of high here and beehivey and trying to make it look period, but it was dangling. It was all looking very silly, but there we are. The Beatles were, of course, huge, but I loved their music, but I was not exactly a major fan. I was not one of those screaming girls. I was utterly bewildered because it was so out of control. It was so, they were tearing up seats, and some of them were being sick and fainting, and it was an extreme of emotion. It was a sort of mass hysteria, really. But it was quite funny. I think at the end of the first day, I think Paul said, you know, how are you getting home? And I said, well, I suppose I'll be going home on the tube. And he said, well, I'll give you a lift home if you like. I've got a driver and a car here. And I said, oh, that'd be brilliant. Thank you very much if it's not taking you out of your way. So we got downstairs to the secret location. And sure enough, there were hordes of these same girls, probably, that I'd seen screaming and this mass hysteria outside at the Scala Theatre. And I was completely unprepared for how frightening it was, actually. It must have been awful for him, because they were grabbing onto him, people trying to keep them off him. But they were very, very vicious with me. They pulled my hair, they scratched me, they pulled me, they punched me, they pinched me. And it was horrible. I remember thinking, if this is fame, how very frightening for them, and I wouldn't like to have any part of this, you know, being prodded and almost everybody wanted to have a claim of him, always having a piece of him. And by the same token, that I had no business being in his company at all. And what was I doing there? And so we got into the car and drove away, and he dropped me off, and that was fine. And then again the next day, when I think we finished early, he said, would you like a lift home? And I said, thank you very much indeed, but actually I'm fine going home on the tube. Quite strange turning down a lift from Paul McCartney, but I'd had enough. One day was enough of all the girls. I remember when I was dropped from the film, Dick Lester rang me up himself personally, which was very nice of him to do. They didn't ring my agent or anything, he said, and he tried to explain it.
Its pace was a little languid, and we felt really didn't deserve to be in the film.
And it was a bit too slow at the time, and yet it was difficult to cut into the scene, because the scene made no sense if you cut it in half. But they also said that they thought that maybe it was inappropriate that any one of the Beatles should be singled out to have a scene with a girl.
Each of the boys had his own little set piece, and that was Paul's, and Paul never got one because of that.
That was the decision, so I ended up with a chop on the cutting room floor, which was disappointing. It was fun. It was a good 2 days, and it's 2 days that I, of course, will never forget, and stored up in that memory bank forever.